Welcome back to the land of poorly thought through adventures. We got the new engine in the Intruder Camaro. The next project is to do something about the exhaust. Since I had to replace the headers because I used angle plug heads, so my old headers wouldn't fit, the exhaust wasn't the right length to match up. It was also 2 1/4 inch exhaust, which I really wanted 2 1/2 inch. So I cobbled that together to get the exhaust hooked up so we could at least run the car in and start figuring out tuning on it. But in the meantime, I ordered this exhaust, which is a 3-inch stainless exhaust from Pypes. Of course, they're not paying me because nobody pays me. And I ordered 3-inch instead of 2 1/2 inch because the difference was not very much money. It was like less than 50 bucks. They have 3 different levels of mufflers. These are the Race Pros, which they say are their freest flowing, but also their quietest. There's a specific reason I wanted the quietest mufflers, and that's because we're going to add loud. So we've got to fit this all under the car and figure out where these electric cutouts are going to be. I've got 2 of them, 1 for each side. Obviously, the easy thought would be to go right here, but these are weld on. And I'd have to weld those in place, which isn't impossible, it's just annoying. So I'm hoping that they will fit right there, which means I'd only have to weld in 1 joint. So we just got to figure all this out. Pypes says to install this kit starting at the back and working your way to the front. So I'm going to record the exhaust now. So we have a before sound, and then we'll have an after sound once we get it all on the car. Then I'm going to cut the exhaust off and start with the tailpipes and the over axle tubes and get the mufflers in place, and then put the collector adapters at the front, and then figure out how to make all the middle go. So it should be simple except for the 3 pieces that need to go in the middle. This part should be somewhat easy to fit. There is a review on Summit Racing's website where somebody's put one of these on another late second gen. I don't know if it was a Firebird or not, but it also had a rear sway bar like this car has. This car is lowered about 2 inches all the way around, but I don't think that should be too much of an issue. There seems like there's enough room around the rear end, but we're about to find out. The kit comes with a bunch of the hardware, comes with the brackets, comes with band clamps. This is all designed to be slip fit and bolted together instead of being welded. So hopefully this will go together as painlessly as any aftermarket part is ever going to be, which is, we know that this is not going to be easy. There will probably be many barley sodas, probably lots of parts being thrown, probably lots of aggravation. Yeah. It's probably going to take me several days because I'm going to get mad and walk away from it like I do with everything else. Okay, here we are under the car. There's what appears to be a factory hanger at the back of the back seats behind the muffler. We got the tube that goes over the exhaust and around and out the back corner. And if I can get on it, that's a hanger right there. It's bolted to the subframe right there. So we just got to unbolt that and the exhaust should come loose. But the way this goes up and over the axle, so there's kind of an axle on the way, I think I'm going to take a Sawzall and try to cut it right here at this crimp bend so that the forward piece is 1 piece and the tail piece is another piece. That way I save, well, this is kind of cobbled together too, but I save these mufflers if I want to use them on another project that rhymes with Chevy truck. And then you can see this exhaust goes up and it's cobbled right there and there, where I've slip fit. I haven't even welded in 2 pieces just to get this in the car. See the shiny transmission pan? Isn't that fancy? See, everything. Isn't it nice under here? Very dirty. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to start by making a cut right here, and then we're going to unbolt here and at the collector and at that back piece to see if I can take the whole exhaust off in 2 pieces on both sides and then figure out how to put it back in. Alright, we have replaced the hanger brackets on both sides, and we've put the tail pipes in, the over axle pipe, the muffler, and the X pipe. And all of this stuff fits good. It's a little tight to the brake line, but everything needs to be kind of moved around. Nothing has this clamp's not even tight. Everything has to be clamped in place. The problem I've got right now is the X pipe is lining up with the transmission crossmember, which isn't too surprising since this crossmember is backwards for this to fit a 700 in it. So we have to cut this leg of the X pipe shorter to bring the X further back. To go in front, we have the collector adapter and these extensions that line up. And there's also a front piece this 45, and I'm hoping to put the electric cutout in this 45. This has to be shortened a little bit to bring this angle in to line up with the headers as far as we can tell. But the first thing I have to do is take the X pipe off. We're going to start on the other end and work this way so the X pipe's in the middle to figure out how much I need to cut off so we can fit everything up before we modify anything for the cutouts. So far everything fits. All the pieces are too long, which is exactly what you want, so you can cut them to fit. The mufflers fit in the cutouts under the rear seat. The 3-inch pipes going over the rear axle all fit really good. As you can see, nothing is tight, everything's loose. This will clear all the leaf springs and everything. Once I get everything fit, I can tighten everything up and adjust it as we go. So it seems to fit pretty good so far, but the next thing is to take this out, fit the front end, and start cutting the middle out so that we can slip fit everything. Okay, I've got a transmission jack with some blocks of wood under the mufflers here, trying to mock everything up. The X pipe is too long because right now the X lines up directly under the cross member. See? So I have to shorten this. I've got this collector extension going to this 45 that lines up. And it lines up pretty good with the cross member there. Focus. Or not. Anyway, I'm going to cut 3/4 of an inch off of that pipe right here inside this bell, which will pull that extension back or shorter so I can move this 45 forward. Then the X pipe, I have to figure out how much to shorten it so the mufflers will tuck up into the frame under the seat there so I can line up the tailpipes at the back, and there's just really no place for the cutouts except right here in the 45, which means I'm going to have to shorten them, and I might have to cut this bell shorter and cut this slot for the clamp longer to make this work to get the cutout in this area right here, because when you get further back there's no room under the floorboard for the motor on the cutout, the stepper motor. It has to fit in this area right under the driver's seat, so it's not going to be loud at all. So I'm going to start by cutting that, then put the 45s on, and we're going to cut a couple inches off of this to slide the X member back to line up on that. And as you see, I've got both the mufflers on one board, and the idea is to put them up against the floor with a piece of like 3/4 inch ply or something on top of them so that they'll stay clear of the floor and level, and then I can work on getting that lined up to work on the X pipe to work on moving forward. And also I've got an O2 sensor that has to go into that collector extension, so I have to drill that and weld that in. So we're about to have some good times. Okay, I have shortened the collector extensions by about an inch or so, and that has them fitting within a finger's thickness. It's not going to focus, of the transmission cross member. So that's got both of these about where I want them. So what I did was I put the X pipe back on, lined it up with the mufflers, and made a mark at the edge of the muffler here. These slots, focus, these slots are 2 inches up from the body. In this case, they're about an inch long. So what I've done is I've got the cross member over here on the workbench, right here, and I have marked them with a piece of tape to cut them 2 and 7/8 inches long from the end of where they're currently cut. I've already cut them once. That will leave about 1 inch from this line to the beginning of the slot in that bell. So that should be enough overlap so when I put the clamp on, it won't, well, shouldn't leak. So now all I gotta do is cut both of these and then try to fit the X pipe again. And the X pipe tells you which way to go. See, it's got an arrow. So this is either the way to Pocahontas, the Last of the Mohicans, or the front of the car. So we're gonna cut it, both of these right there, as straight as I can, which is not going to be very straight because I'm not very good at fabrication. That's Andrew's job. Trusty Portaband. Did you see me restore this vise? Look, it's already starting to rust. How terrible. You should check out the video where I restored this. Anyway, we're going to cut this and then try it again. I'm going to try to video this the best I can. The tailpipe tips are there. These don't come with any further tip. I want to put a set of Trans Am style splitters on it because I think that'd look cool, but whatever. Anyway, tips fit. Get under the lift here. Plenty of leaf spring clearance. We're tight to this brake hose, but I can bend the bracket. The mufflers can actually go up about 3/4 of an inch, but right now they're hanging level. The X pipe is in, going up to the header extensions all the way up. Now, one thing I did have to do because I didn't think this through, passenger side header is back about 3/4 of an inch or an inch because of the way the pistons are offset in the engine. The passenger head is further back. So this pipe had to be shortened a little bit more. What we got to do now is figure out where to put, you know, all this stuff is hanging. There's no clamps tight on this right now. Not one clamp is tight. We got to figure out where we can put the cutouts. They need to go here. This is the best place for them. The most room for them is back here, but with the floor pan, I don't think there's ground clearance. So we're going to figure that out. We're going to pause and have a barley soda. Figure that out. I might put my transmission jack with a board on it, push these up, see if I can get more clearance. I'd like a little more clearance back here. Obviously, I need a little bit more fitting here. Again, nothing's tight, but you see there's plenty of room to the suspension. So this is all going to fit. The 3-inch Pypes exhaust does fit on the second gen with a factory Z28 sway bar. I don't know about other ones. This is the F41 Plus Nasty Z28 recommended leaf spring. Lowers the back of the car about 1 inch to 2 inches. And everything seems to be clearing fine. Since this is a 4-post lift, the car is sitting on a suspension right now. So you can see there's plenty of clearance. Everything's going to fit fine once I get it all bolted up. So I'm going to take a little break and I'm going to figure out where I'm going to put my cutouts, and we're going to go from there. Okay, we have everything installed and roughed in. I haven't put any of the clamps on yet, but everything tucks up nice against the body. We've got the cutout flanges in. I ran out of welding gas, so I had to use flux core to weld on the O2 sensor bung, because I am going to tune the carburetor with an O2 sensor. Got both sides all done. Ground down my ugly welds. So now I just got to put in the butterflies and the turn downs and all the clamps. Now, if I back up a little bit, well, there's a board in the way, but you can see all this is going to fit. Well, it's kind of falling apart, but this 3-inch system has all fit just fine. I've spent probably 2 hours getting the cutouts lined up and installed, and I probably spent 3 hours taking off the old system and putting on this new system. So I'm going to spend another probably hour or two installing clamps, lining everything up, and then go get tacos. But I think all this should clear. I did bend this brake line down. It's hard to see because it's dark in there. I did bend the tab for the brake line for the rear axle down to make clearance to this over axle pipe. That's really the only modification I've done to the car. Obviously all the stuff's sitting on wood right now, but the whole Y pipe, everything lined up. The flanges are ball and socket. I didn't mention these. The headers are Hedman ceramic coated headers designed for angle plug heads on a second gen chassis. And I did put a little dimple right here because they were touching the lower control arm bracket, and then the support bracket that goes to the frame, I took that off, but that's not really an important thing. This side clears fine. It doesn't look like it, but there is clearance there. The passenger side header went in from above. Driver side went in from below. On the first installation, we put the driver side in from above, but we took the brake booster loose from the firewall, and then it would slide in. Now, this oil pan has a kick out because this is for a stroker kit, and I need one to clear the oil pump and the stroker kit. So this is a circle track pan. It's got this big kick out which captures the starter. So with this oil pan, Moroso oil pan, even with the mini starter, with these headers, the starter is captured. There's nothing I can do about that other than use a different oil pan. So if the starter ever goes bad, the passenger side header has to come off, but it does come out from above. So I've got to, tighten up these ball flange connections, put all the band clamps on all the unions all the way back, and then make sure everything is tucked up nice. You can see this muffler is a little crooked, but so need a little adjustment there, but just little tweaks here and there. Whack them with a wacky stick, and we should get everything lined up. And then run the band clamps down. I thought about welding all of this, and it wouldn't be hard to weld if I still had argon from my welder, but I'm out, whatever. But if I ever have to take the exhaust off the car to drop the transmission, drop the axle, whatever, having it all band clamped is going to make it easier to take apart. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use the clamps that come with the kit and tighten it all up with a battery-powered impact wrench and call it a day. So let me tighten it up, and then we'll do a sound video for the after side. This hot mess is the wiring harness for the electric cutouts. I've read the instructions, and it says that you can wire these to one switch by cutting the 3 wires loose from these terminals and then using the crimp connectors to put them on the same switch. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that. Right now I'm planning on using 2 switches mounted to the dash under the logic that if one of these fails, I'd only have one fail, because with my luck they will fail in the open position, so I can at least close one side if the controllers fail. So I'm going to wire these up. Right now I'm planning on wiring these up separately. Once I get to the point where I'm drilling the dash, I'll decide for sure. This is the brain box that operates all this, and they go back. Pretty simple connection. Positive, negative, red's positive. I'm going to cut these fuse holders off. I actually have a fuse box, a little small 6 terminal fuse box underneath the cup holders in the console of this car. And I'm just going to cut this off, and I'm going to wire the red put a spade on that, and then use that fuse block for my fuse holder. These are the extension wires that go out under the car. You disconnect these, and that end is going to plug into this end of the controller, and the other end plugs into the wiring on the cutout itself. And they give you some branded heat shrink to put over this and heat shrink down so that water doesn't get into that connection. I do have a hole in the firewall right next to the brake booster where the wiring for the amplifier, and this car has an amplifier in it, the wiring goes through there, and I'm going to pull this through there, and there's no grommet on that, but everything I run through there, I put a piece of heater hose around it and then zip tie the heater hose so that the heater hose acts like a grommet. I figure it's also a little bit thicker than a regular grommet, and I can make them, you know, somewhere the right length. Anyhow, also going through that is got to be this harness. This end goes into the car. This end stays out. And then I've got an O2 sensor that I'm going to hook up to the driver's side exhaust. I've already put the bung in. And then this just sits in the console in the little cubby. You can see I've already got it kind of pre-run so I can wire it up. I just got to find the wiring under the dash to hook this up to so that I can tune the carburetor on the new engine. This is just the standard wideband. It'll give me the air-fuel ratio as I'm driving it. It's not in the car, and I don't leave it in the car because once you get the carburetor tuned, you don't need it. So I use this as a tuning tool. I don't like the way this looks, having the digital gauge in addition to the white Autometer Phantom 2s or whatever they are, Phantoms. Although this does kind of match, I don't like having one digital gauge and the rest analog, so I don't leave it in the car. So I'm going to start under the car. I'm going to put in my O2 sensor, hook up the wiring end, hook these up. They do send some of these little clips. I might use some of those. I've got some other little plastic clips and zip ties and rat all the wiring out into the engine bay. That was weird. Anyhow, and then pull these through the firewall, and I'm going to leave the bulk of this wiring inside the car. I have the instrument bezel out of the car, and as you can see, the Gorilla Glue that I used back in 2012 is let go, holding the air conditioner vents in, so I got to redo that. My plan is to put these toggle switches roughly in this area of the dash. When I wired up this car, I did wire all this stuff to one plug. One plug and two individual wires, because there was two more wires than there were spaces in this plug. So all this comes out easy once you remember to disconnect the speedometer cable and then the wiper switch and the headlight switch, whatever. You don't care, doesn't matter. It's the wiring harness for the cutouts. These are the control boxes. I'm going to use some of that double-sided 3M tape and stick these here on the inside. Then these will go here, and then this is the power side. This wiring is, I mean, what is that? 75 gauge wire? I know the bigger the number, the smaller the wire. That's like hair. It's tiny. So this thing can't pull any amperage. I have this new connector with the terminals for it. I think this is for I don't remember what this is for. Lights on a tractor, I think. Whatever. Anyhow, I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to put both of the wires together on one of these. Since these are so small, they can't pull any load. This is designed for 14 gauge wire. I might have to put wire inside that to shim it out. I got red wire, black wire. The idea is to have these two wires together, the power leads from both setups. You get the idea. On one connector. So there's only one connector behind the dash to connect and disconnect. And then this will go straight down and around. I've got a screw that I use as a common ground under the dash. I'll connect this to it with a ring terminal on the other end of this. And then this I'll tie into that little fuse block that's under the cup holders in the console, because this 80 Camaro has cup holders. from a Saturn. It's a thing. You should do it. Anyhow, so I got to figure out how I want these side by side, over, under, down low, up here, because I got to drill a hole in this aluminum. I don't know what to do yet. I haven't figured that out, but I'm sure after another barley soda or 5, that will be obvious. That, and it's like 95 degrees in here, plus the heat index, and I'm tired. Make it happen. Well, you have got everything wired up. I've chased all the wires. They're zip tied up out of place, running up to the front. They go through the firewall. You can see inside there if I hold this expensive Harbor Freight flashlight just right. All right, hit the switch again. Hit it again the other way. It's hard to see. Let's try that again. All right, hit it again. Hit it the other way. All right, so I did wire them to one toggle switch together. Wires pulled around. Probably should put a clamp there, although it's so tight, I don't think the clamp will fit. I did wire them into one toggle switch and mounted that on the dash, and the controllers are stuck to the back of the instrument bezel like I talked about. So I'm gonna sit the car down and we're gonna crank it up and see what happens. Okay, we've got an microphone hanging next to each exhaust pipe. We're going to record the sound. This is the exhaust that was on the car when I bought it back in 2012, which is a 2 1/4 inch exhaust system with Flowmasters. I don't know what series they are. Well, maybe we'll see when we take it apart. Maybe I'll say. And I've cobbled in pieces to make this fit on the new headers. So, all right, start it up. We got the car running, and I'm not underneath it, I'm laying up beside it. So I'm going to give my assistant the thumbs up, and we're going to see what it does. Celebration barley soda. Pardon how sweaty I am. Heat index today here in South Carolina is 105. It's not very nice here in the shop, and if I have the fan on, you can't hear anything else. And outside behind the shop today, my neighbor is working on doing some grading for me for a project I'm doing back behind the workshop. My takeaways from installing this Pypes exhaust kit on the Second Gen. Pypes, again, did not pay me for this. I paid full retail, bought it from Summit. If Pypes wants to pay me, I'll gladly take your money. Second Gen Camaro, this is an 80, so it's got the floor humps for catalytic converters, but the mufflers fit underneath the back seat, so that's irrelevant. We've got Hedman headers that have the ball and socket style, so I had to buy a set of ball and sockets that were 3 inch. They came with ball and socket collector adapters for 2.5 inch. If I had used the 2.5 inch kit, I could have saved that money on not having to buy another set of collector adapters. Also, the 2.5 inch kit is cheaper all the way through because it's smaller. But I wanted the 3 inch kit because I wanted the sound. This engine doesn't need a 3 inch exhaust kit, but whatever. If I ever put a big block or a big LS, big cubic inch LS engine in it, I've got more exhaust than the car needs. And with the transmission, the way it's set up, the car's essentially set up as good as it really needs to be, except that rear axle's still got a 10-bolt in it. The 3 inch exhaust pipe kit from Pypes, it fit very good. It is tight around the leaf springs in the back. This car also does have lowering leaf springs in the back, so it's dropped about 2 inches in the rear. Dropped about, well, yeah, I think it's 2 inches all the way around with the leaf springs and the coil springs I've got in it. If you go to nastyz28.com and look up the F41 Plus leaf or spring kit, that's what they recommend. Actually, springs came from a truck company out of Florida, as I recall. I mean, it's been 12 years since I bought them. So it's not an off-the-shelf kit where you can go to Summit or wherever, Jags, whoever, and order the F41 Plus kit. But somebody's taken the F41, which is the Gymkhana handling package, and they made a pair of part numbers for the leaf springs and the coil springs. And this is set up for small block coil spring, 2 inch lowering all the way around. Also, I have solid body mounts that are 1/2 inch lowering. So this car is a good bit lower than a factory 1980 would be. And I ran into the problem when I first built the car, is that the stock size tires rubbed on the wheel wells. I had to put a smaller tire in the front to get clearance in the front end because I didn't want to raise the car back up. All that to say, ground clearance is pretty good. I did have one clamp. It's got the traditional U-bolt style muffler clamps on it, which don't look that good. You can see them from the outside of the car. Maybe I can find a way to reposition them so that they hide a little bit better. Or I might take them off and I might buy some of those flat strap band style clamps to replace them. But they're sealing. One of them was positioned a little bit too low and it was dragging on the lift, coming on and off the lift. But I could see where it dinged it, so I just loosened that one up, spun it around the top, tightened it back up again. The exhaust kit fit fine. I did have to shorten it some to make it fit. I did install the entire kit and then took it back, between the mufflers and the headers back off and put in the cutouts. So I wanted to see how it would fit. All that fit fine. I did have to cut it, but they do make the pipes a little bit long. I believe it is made long intentionally so that the 45 pieces, so you can get your width in case you're going with, depending on if you have race port heads, what kind of headers you have, big block, small block. So there's a little bit of universality there, and also the length, depending on the length of your headers, if you're running like a shorty or something like that as opposed to a long tube. They fit fine. Like I said, once I did a little bit of trimming, it didn't really need an awful lot. I got it all fit really nice. Then I blew it back apart, put in the Ys for the cutouts, and that's where I did have to do some welding because I didn't want to take the time to take the parts to a muffler shop to have them bell that 3-inch pipe, which being stainless probably would be kind of tough because stainless exhaust pipe is pretty hard, which makes it a little bit more brittle. Anyway, so I did weld it there, had just enough welding gas in my tank to finish that weld, and then I ran out, but I ground down the welds, cleaned it up, it's under the car, it's fine. It's sealed, that's all I care about. The electric cutouts. I use the Granatelli electric cutouts, got them from Summit again. They don't pay me. Again, if you want to pay me, I'll gladly take your sponsorship money. The wiring on them is real thin. Makes me question how long they're going to last. The stepper motor assembly and the stainless casting, because it looks like it is a stainless casting with the butterflies in it, that seems to be pretty good quality, but again, it's very fine wiring. It might be like a 20 gauge wire, it's real small. Makes me wonder how long they'll last. I don't know, but the hard part of the exhaust, all this, the piping is all done. If the flappers, the actuators themselves fail, I can replace those without having to take the exhaust back apart and redo it. So I've got that going for me. Doing the wiring was pretty easy since when I first built this car, I put an O2 sensor on it to tune the 305 that was in it. I did add an O2 sensor bone to this exhaust system, and I put the O2 sensor back in it. So I had a hole in the firewall that was set up to run that wiring through, and I just pulled the wiring for the cutouts through that same hole, zip tied everything back up out of the way so everything clears the exhaust, clears the steering, nothing's going to move, everything's fine. All the extra wire is coiled up behind the dashboard so you can't see it. I did tie all the wiring together to one toggle switch. That turned out to be it looked better. I kind of held the two up and looked at it. My wife came out and looked at it. She didn't like the way it looked either. We just decided to do the one switch. She drives this car a good bit too, so we both wanted to be happy. Tying the wiring in together, the instructions in the kit it's very cut and dry. It's a very simple piece of cake to do. Pulling everything through is a piece of cake. I had an advantage in that when I built this car the first time, I added a second fuse block underneath the console. So I had 12 volts right there to add to it. It's not switched. Big deal. Doesn't really matter. These things aren't going to pull that much amp. The wiring harness with it, the two fuse holders for them are 7.5 amp fuses. I did call the Granatelli tech line. They advised me to use a 15 amp fuse. They did say that people that are running two on one power source, two kits on one power source, were popping fuses if they didn't use a 15 amp fuse, and that makes sense. 7.5 times 2 is 15. So that all worked out real well. The instructions are a little misleading. It makes you believe that you have to hold the switch either up or down or left or right, however you orient that switch, while the butterflies are turning, and then release it when they get to the end of their travel. That's not true. The little computer brain box controller assemblies that are in there, you just push the switch up or down, or whichever way you have it oriented, and it automatically runs the stepper motor till it hits the stop, and then it stops the motion. All in all, I'm happy with the installation. I'm happy with the way everything fits. I like the sound. Obviously, when it's open exhaust, it's going to sound like a 10.4 compression overcammed stroker small block.